Hi, I'm Ellery. They told me it was just a misunderstanding when they threw my suitcase into the rain, that it wasn't personal when they handed my sister the house I grew up in, or the college funds I never got. But here's the truth. When your own family decides you're disposable, they don't scream it. They whisper it in birthday cards that forget your name. I didn't fight back, not at first. I baked. I smiled. I washed their dishes while they erased me. Then one night, a ticket, a storm, and a silence too heavy to ignore. What happens when the person they cast aside becomes the one thing they never saw coming? Would you have walked away, or stayed to prove them wrong? They didn't notice when I walked in. I could have been a neighbor's friend or a lost delivery driver for all they cared. I stood in the entryway for a few seconds longer than I should have, hoping for someone, anyone, to look up. My hands were full with the casserole I made, still warm, covered with foil. I had borrowed the glass dish from Mom's cabinet 2 weeks ago, and I figured maybe this would be a way to return it, along with some good grace. The house buzzed with chatter. Brexley's laughter rang loudest, like a crystal bell on a marble countertop. She stood in the center of it all, newly engaged and glowing with curated charm. Her fiancé, tall and wide-shouldered, looked like someone fresh off a real estate billboard. I made my way to the kitchen, passing a group clustered around the cheese tray. No one stopped talking. The dining table was already full. 10 seats, 10 bodies, 1 missing chair. I hovered behind Mom, who was cutting lemon wedges for the iced tea. She didn't turn. "Put the dish over there," she said, pointing toward the counter. A neighbor I hadn't seen in years leaned toward the table. "Whose birthday is it again?" she asked, lifting a wineglass. "Brexley's," someone replied with cheerful ease. I smiled, tight-lipped, like always. No one corrected them. When the cake finally came out, the lights dimmed just slightly, and a small hush fell over the room. Brexley stood at the head of the table, practically glowing in candlelight. The frosting was flawless. White buttercream, edible gold trim, a delicate sugar flower. "Happy birthday, Brexley," it read. In cursive. No mention of me. I was born on the same day, in the same hospital, just 3 years after her. Mom clapped first. Then others joined. Brexley beamed, soaking it in like she earned every bit of the applause. I stood off to the side, just out of frame for the photos. I clapped too, because not clapping would have made a bigger scene. Then came the voice, cutting across the chatter. "Do you want a slice with your name on it, Elle?" someone asked. Another person chimed in, laughing. "Maybe next year, huh?" The knife in Mom's hand slid through the cake, perfect and effortless. "I'll take the corner," I said. No one responded. I carried my plate into the kitchen, stood at the sink, and began washing the already clean serving spoons. The water was warm, but my hands stayed cold. I stared out the window. The lemon tree in the backyard hadn't borne fruit in years. I stayed in there for a while. It's amazing how long you can stand still in a house full of people without anyone noticing. Eventually, the sound of dishes being cleared pulled me back. I dried my hands and walked into the hallway. I paused by the coat rack, where my jacket hung, still untouched since I'd arrived. That's when I heard them. The living room lights were dim, just a lamp on by the fireplace. I recognized the cadence of my father's voice, measured, always like he was explaining something to someone who might disagree. "I just think it's time we settle the house situation," he said. "She's not going to stay forever," Mom added. "And Brexley's starting her family soon. It's cleaner this way." I froze by the hallway arch. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just too stunned to move. "She's not even working," Brexley said. "I mean, how long are we supposed to let her float?" Dad let out a long sigh. "We'll frame it as logistics. Keep it clean. She won't argue if we don't make it emotional." My name wasn't mentioned, not once. But I knew. They were talking about me, about the house I grew up in, the one I helped repaint 2 summers ago when Dad threw out his back, the one I moved back into after my business collapsed. I stepped forward. The carpet beneath my feet didn't make a sound. The three of them turned. "Oh," Dad said, his face freezing halfway between explanation and guilt. "Didn't think you were still here." I smiled. It was the kind I'd mastered over the years, soft at the edges, unreadable in the middle. "No one ever does," I said, and I turned back toward the guest room, the one with the door that never closed all the way. And maybe that's why I started writing those emails they never answered. I don't remember the first one, exactly. I think it was after college, when I moved to Dallas for that first awful job. It was nothing special, just an update, a quick hello, a reminder that I still existed. Over the years, the messages grew longer, more careful. They covered birthdays I spent alone, holidays I couldn't come home for, quiet confessions about the little things that went wrong, and the big things I couldn't tell anyone else. None of them were ever returned. After the birthday dinner, I sat cross-legged on the bed in the guest room, which still smelled like old cedar and mothballs, and opened my laptop. The browser automatically loaded my inbox. It was the same email thread I'd kept alive like a dying plant, sending out another message every few months just to see if anyone was still listening. I scrolled through the older ones, reading them in reverse like someone scanning their own diary out of order. "Hey, Mom, the leak in the garage looks like it's getting worse. I'll be home next week. I can patch it. Just wanted to say the peach cobbler recipe you gave me was a hit. Thanks. Are we still doing Christmas Eve dinner this year? Let me know what to bring." Nothing. There wasn't even a read receipt. I hovered my fingers over the keys, then typed something simple. "Thanks for the cake today." I stared at the screen. Then I hit backspace, closed the tab, closed the laptop. The next evening, we gathered for dinner again. That week had some important guest in town, one of Brexley's friends from grad school who apparently needed to experience authentic Texas home cooking. The table was set like a magazine shoot. Napkins folded, glasses sparkling, everything aligned, except me. I sat across from Dad. Brexley was beside him, naturally, talking with her fiancé about honeymoon destinations and how Hawaii was so overrated now. Then she said it, loud enough for the table to quiet. "You know, Dad once told me, you're the one who made us proud." There was a pause. She laughed. "At least one of us didn't turn into a cautionary tale." Her fiancé chuckled like he didn't know what she meant. But he did. Everyone did. I didn't move. My fork hovered just above the mashed potatoes, suspended midair like it had been frozen. No one looked my way. No one flinched. Even my father just sighed and reached for his wine glass. I set the fork down slowly and said, "Well, I guess every family needs a bad example." A few people laughed, politely. The kind of laugh you offer at a funeral to fill the silence. No one defended me. No one told her to stop. After dinner, I helped clear the table. Mom didn't say anything as I rinsed the plates. Neither did Dad. Brexley leaned against the kitchen island and texted someone, smirking like she'd just won another game I wasn't allowed to play. That night, I lay in bed with my laptop open again. I deleted all the drafts I'd been holding on to. Some were just a few lines. Others were nearly full essays about how much it hurt to be forgotten by the people who raised you. I closed the email tab for good. Instead, I reached into my backpack and pulled out a folded envelope. Inside was a lottery ticket I'd bought on impulse 3 weeks ago from the gas station down the road. I hadn't even scratched it or checked the numbers yet. I placed it on my sketchbook, just beneath the ribbon bookmark. Then I whispered out loud, to no one in particular, just in case the universe needs a receipt. The air in the room felt lighter, not hopeful, but less heavy. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed. A notification from Brexley. She'd posted a photo on Facebook of the dinner, tagged everyone around the table, even the neighbor's daughter who stopped by for dessert. The caption read, "The one who got it right." My name wasn't there, not even in the comments. I stared at the screen for a while, then set the phone down on the nightstand. And that's when it hit me. Some people keep you invisible on purpose, It helps them stay big. And maybe it was. Maybe I was sinking. But if that meant I no longer had to tread water in their perfect little aquarium, so be it. A few days passed. I stayed mostly out of sight, kept quiet, kept helpful. Brexley acted like I was a ghost, and my parents treated me like the kind you avoid eye contact with in church. I wasn't surprised, but I was tired. That Friday, Mom called while I was in line at the pharmacy. Her voice was sweet, careful. "I thought we could catch up, just the two of us. Lunch tomorrow?" I hesitated. She filled the pause with, "You could use a good meal, honey. I'll make a reservation at that cafe you like." The cafe I liked hadn't been one I'd visited with her. But I said yes. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was stupid. Saturday came gray and dry, the kind of Texas winter day that doesn't bother pretending to be cold. I wore jeans and a sweater. Nothing special. She arrived early, already seated, sipping tea. And she wasn't alone. There was a man next to her. Clean suit, thin tie, the kind of smile that said he'd reviewed my credit report before we even shook hands. "Ellery," Mom said warmly, "this is Mr. Lyle. He's been helping us with some paperwork." I slid into the booth slowly. A server came by. I asked for coffee. Mr. Lyle handed me a folder. I hadn't even opened the menu yet. "It's just a formality," Mom said, brushing a piece of lint off her lap. "You're not planning to stay in the house long term, and with Brexley's engagement, well, this will make things easier." I opened the folder. It was a quitclaim deed. To the house. Our house. The one with my initials carved into the wood behind the pantry door. "You want me to sign away my rights to the house?" Mom took a slow sip of her tea. "It's never been about rights, sweetheart. You've never contributed financially. We've always supported you." My mouth went dry. Mr. Lyle said, "It'll clean up the title and avoid confusion later." I read the lines again. My hand shook, but not from fear, from clarity. There was a clause near the end, small font, like a footnote. It released me from any claim to future inheritance. Not just the house, everything. I closed the folder gently and placed it back on the table. "I'll think about it," I said, keeping my voice flat. Mom nodded, smiling. "Of course." That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts flickered like the motel's ceiling fan, repetitive, noisy, hard to ignore. The next morning, I went back to that same cafe. Alone. I ordered a black coffee and asked for an empty booth. I reread the contract slowly, methodically. Then I took the envelope, sealed it back up, unsigned, and walked it to the nearest post office. No note, no explanation, just my absence, just my refusal. But apparently, silence wasn't acceptable unless they were the ones choosing it. The following day, during dinner, Brexley made sure everyone knew she'd misplaced something. A gold watch. A gift from her fiancé. "I hate to even bring it up," she said, her voice full of pretend reluctance. "But I know I left it on the hallway table. Now it's gone." Dad didn't blink. He looked right at me. "You know your sister's fiancé keeps his belongings here, too," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "We'd hate for him to feel uncomfortable." My fork hit the plate too hard. It echoed. "You're accusing me?" I asked. Mom cleared her throat, like this was a conversation she hoped wouldn't get loud. "Nobody's accusing you, Ellery. We're just saying, if you needed something, you could have asked." It was surgical, no yelling, no direct blame, just implication, just enough venom to wound without spilling blood. I stood up, took my plate to the sink, washed it, dried it, and said nothing. That night, I walked past the cafe one more time. They were closing soon, lights dimmed. But the girl at the counter recognized me and held the door. I asked for a cup to go, then sat outside at one of their tables, placed the envelope beside me, and stared at it under the patio heater. I knew what they were doing. They wanted the story clean, tidy, the failure of a daughter who'd been helped too much for too long. But I'd never asked for handouts. I'd asked to be seen. That's all. I dropped the envelope into a mailbox across the street. No signature, no initials, no strings. Back at the motel, my phone buzzed. A text from Brexley. I hope you find peace soon. It's sad to watch someone sink this low. I didn't reply, just stared at the message for a long moment. She thought I was drowning. But I'd finally stopped pretending I wanted to stay afloat in their world. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of calm that only comes after a final decision. Not joy, not peace, just stillness. It was laundry day and trash day. I heard the distant groan of the garbage truck turning the corner, the metallic crash of empty bins hitting the pavement. It gave the morning a kind of rhythm, a reminder that everything eventually gets taken out. Marvina knocked on my door, not really waiting for permission before stepping inside. Can you go through the mudroom drawer today? It's been a mess for months. We're trying to clean up the place before Brexley's engagement party. Of course we were. She didn't say thank you. She didn't ask if I had anything else to do. I just nodded and followed her down the hallway. The mudroom was always dusty, a kind of liminal space between the kitchen and the back door. I opened the drawer and stared inside. It was a time capsule of things nobody thought important enough to keep anywhere else. Old batteries, expired coupons, keys with no known purpose, a torn envelope with a half-scribbled note inside that read, "He said no again. No date, no context." And then, beneath a stack of restaurant menus from places long closed, I found a lottery ticket. Folded once, creased at the corner. Before I could ask, Marvina glanced over from the sink and said, "Oh, that? One of Brexley's friends gave it to her at brunch a few weeks ago. She didn't want it. Just toss it." She went back to rinsing the dishes like she hadn't just said something small and sharp. I didn't toss it. I slipped it into the pocket of my jeans and finished sorting the drawer. Took the full trash bag outside, tied it shut, and walked it to the curb. No one said anything about it the rest of the day. That night, after I showered and changed into pajamas, I pulled the ticket from my pocket and placed it on the bed. I sat across from it like it might say something, but it didn't. Instead, I dug out my sketchbook and flipped to a blank page. At the top, I wrote, "What they didn't know I noticed." And then I started listing. They keep the best towels for guests. The bathroom light switch was fixed after I moved out. Mom stopped calling me by name in texts 3 years ago. Brexley's name is embroidered on the new stockings. Dad untagged himself from my graduation photo. I didn't cry. I just wrote, until the list felt like it was holding the weight I'd carried for far too long. I taped the ticket next to the list with a small piece of masking tape. Not out of hope, not yet. More like a bookmark in a story that hadn't decided if it was worth continuing. The next day was quiet. Brexley was home early from work and full of opinions about seating charts and color palettes. I stayed in the background, my place of expertise. Later, while helping prep dinner, I stepped into the pantry to grab the rosemary. The door was cracked just wide enough for voices to carry. "She still thinks if she's helpful enough, we'll keep her," Brexley said, almost laughing. A silence followed. Then Mom replied, soft but sharp, "Maybe that's true." I stood there for a moment, not frozen, just done. I grabbed the rosemary, walked out, and set it on the counter without a word. Then I untied my apron, folded it once, and placed it neatly by the stove. "Ellery," Mom asked. "I'm going out," I said. She blinked but didn't stop me. Neither did Brexley. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a speech. I left quietly, just like they always preferred. Back in my room that night, I took a tack from the drawer and pinned the ticket to my corkboard above the desk. Beneath it, I wrote with a pencil, "Just in case something worthless turns out not to be." The house was silent when I came back in, though the tension didn't bother hiding. It was thick in the air, coating the walls, hanging in the doorway like steam from a pot left too long on the stove. I walked through it, past the kitchen where Marvina stirred something on the stove, through the dining room where the table was already set for 6. My shoes were wet from the light drizzle that had started outside. I kicked them off at the door, tucked them under the bench. I'd gone out for groceries, her list, her timing. And even though I hadn't spoken to anyone on the way home, I could already feel the atmosphere shifting before I stepped inside. Brexley was in the entryway when I came in. She didn't say hello. "You forgot the red wine," she said, without looking up from her phone. I stared at her. It wasn't on the list. She finally lifted her eyes, cocked her head slightly. "Everyone knows it's part of dinner. Do I have to spell everything out for you?" I set the bag on the floor. "Then write it next time." Marvina turned from the stove, wooden spoon in hand. "Ladies, let's keep the tone down." I stayed still. Brexley took a step closer. "You know what, Mom? Maybe tone isn't the problem. Maybe the problem is that Ellery thinks doing the bare minimum gives her a seat at this table." I opened my mouth, but Norvin's voice came booming from the hallway. "Enough!" He walked in, his expression flat, but voice loud. "You come home after we carried you for years. You mope around, cause tension, and now you can't even follow a simple grocery list?" I blinked at him. "You asked me to do the errand. Don't twist this. If you can't do the smallest thing right, maybe you shouldn't be here." There it was. No more mask, no more passive-aggressive whispers. Just the truth. Brexley folded her arms like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Honestly," she said, laughing softly, "I always wondered why they didn't kick you out sooner." It hit like a slap I didn't flinch from. I looked at all three of them. No one averted their gaze. They wanted this. Norvin opened the hall closet, pulled out my old duffel bag, and tossed it to the floor near my feet. "Pack what you need," he said. "This isn't working anymore." Marvina chimed in, her tone feigning softness. "It's just for now. Maybe you need time to figure things out, on your own." Their kindness had edges. I bent down slowly and picked up the bag. It was dusty, still had my college ID clipped to the side pocket. I didn't speak, just stood and walked to the guest room. It took under 10 minutes, a pair of jeans, 2 t-shirts, a toothbrush, the sketchbook, the ticket. When I walked out, no one stopped me. Rain had started, real this time, not a drizzle. Thick drops hit the pavement in steady rhythm. I stepped outside, pulled the hood of my jacket up, and walked down the driveway with my bag slung over one shoulder. My socks soaked through instantly. Brexley stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. As I reached the edge of the street, I heard her call out. Not to apologize, not even to gloat. "Don't forget, this is what happens when you wear out your welcome." I didn't look back. The rain clung to my skin like an old memory. I found a bench at the bus stop 3 blocks down. The streetlight above flickered, on, then off, then on again. A few rappers blew by. The air was sharp, cold, but not unbearable. I sat, set my bag down, took the ticket from my sketchbook. It was wrinkled now, curled slightly at the corner. I turned it over in my hand, then laid it in my lap. A woman sat down next to me, wrapped in a poncho. She glanced sideways. "You okay, honey?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine." We both knew I wasn't. She nodded slowly, then pulled out an umbrella and held it over both of us without saying another word. I didn't ask for anything else, just sat there with a stranger who didn't need to know the whole story to offer a small kindness. Time passed in silence. Eventually, the bus came, but I didn't get on. I waited until the rain slowed, then stood, bag in one hand, ticket in the other, and headed toward the all-night convenience store on 5th. The lights inside buzzed. A teenager with a headset stood behind the counter, chewing gum and flipping through his phone. I walked up slowly, placed the ticket down gently like it was made of something fragile. "Can you check this for me?" I asked. He looked up, blinked, then took it. That moment hung between us, quiet, suspended, as the scanner beeped and the screen lit up. The clerk didn't say anything right away. He just looked at the screen, then at me, eyes wide for a second, then cautious. The kind of look people give you when they think you might faint, or scream, or both. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, do you know what this is?" I didn't. Not officially. I had a feeling, a twitch in my gut that had been quiet for too long. He turned the monitor toward me. The number lit up like a neon sign. $73 million. That's what the universe thought I was worth. Or maybe it was just randomness doing its chaotic magic. Either way, it was enough. I walked out of that store without the ticket in my hand. They had to process it, verify it, whatever the state requires. It didn't matter. I left with something better, a reason to stop asking for scraps. For 3 days, I didn't tell anyone. I stayed at a motel across town, bought myself a set of clothes that didn't smell like the last 6 years of my life, and thought. Just thought. On the 4th morning, the motel phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something in me already knew. Marvina. "Sweetheart," she said, like nothing had happened. "We're doing a small dinner for Brexley on Sunday. Just family. You should come." I let the silence sit between us long enough for her to get nervous. Then I said, "Why now?" She didn't hesitate. "Because family sticks together." She didn't mention the suitcase, the rain, the look on my sister's face when the door shut behind me. They'd thrown me out like a mistake they were tired of repeating. But now that I was quiet again, maybe they assumed I'd folded back into shape. That night, I started packing the few things I'd brought to the motel. And while sliding my old files into my bag, I found an accordion folder tucked behind a stack of notebooks. It was labeled FAFSA, 2012-2015. College loan records. I wasn't expecting anything to jump out, but one of the statements had a different address listed, Brexley's. I looked closer. A loan taken out in my name, signed in handwriting that looked like mine, but wasn't. My stomach turned. I pulled up my credit report online, hands shaking not with fear, but with confirmation. There it was, a $42,000 federal student loan I had never taken, disbursed the same semester Brexley started grad school. I called the loan servicer. "We can't discuss that over the phone," they said. But the paperwork didn't lie. I wasn't just erased in my family. I'd been used. Sunday came. I didn't go to dinner. Instead, I made a copy of the entire loan file and slipped it into a plain manila envelope. No return address, no card. I printed one sticky note and pressed it to the front. "Return what doesn't belong to you." I dropped it in the mailbox at the end of the driveway. I imagined Marvina opening it, probably with wine in hand, Brexley reading it out loud with that performative laugh. But I didn't need to see it. I didn't need the reaction. They'd taught me my whole life that silence was acceptable as long as it came from me. So this time, I made my silence heavy, measured. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was Brexley. "You don't get to ruin my dinner over something you barely remember." I stared at the message, then typed back, "Funny, that's how you treated my entire life." I hit send, then turned off my phone. Not out of drama, not to make a point. I just wanted the quiet to be mine this time. The next morning, I stayed in bed longer than usual. Not because I was tired, but because there was nothing urgent pulling me forward. For once, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It just was. I made coffee with the motel's single-cup machine and sat at the little desk by the window. The world outside kept moving, cars passing, birds flitting between wires. But it all felt distant. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need another message pretending the last few weeks hadn't happened. But the phone still rang. The number didn't have a name attached. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but something in me said to answer. "Hello?" The voice on the other end trembled a little. "Ellery?" It took me a second. "Della?" She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. I saw the thing, on the local blog, about the house, the dinner, the whole mess. I didn't say anything. Let her speak. "I should have said something sooner. I knew how they treated you. I saw it." I pressed the phone closer. "You remember that night you got passed over for that college scholarship? The one Brexley didn't even apply for, but somehow ended up getting recommended for?" Her voice cracked. I overheard your mother and father in the kitchen saying it would have been a waste giving it to you. They said, she's just going to come home anyway. Brexley's the one worth investing in. I closed my eyes. She kept talking, fast now, like she needed to finish before her courage ran out. They said you'd always be the one who needed help, that if you got too much attention, you'd start thinking you deserved it. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't. But I was grateful she called. After we hung up, I sat still for a long time. That call didn't surprise me. Not really. It just confirmed what I had always suspected, but never had the audacity to name. Later that day, I took a walk through my old neighborhood. Not toward the house, but the street behind it. Mr. Greaves lived there. Had for as long as I could remember. Retired cop. Always had gadgets. He once helped me fix a school science project that involved security sensors and motion-activated lights. I knocked on his door, heart thudding. He answered in a plaid robe and socks. Same as always. Well, I'll be, he said. Ellery Lane. You all grown up. We talked on the porch for a bit. Then I asked if he still had the camera mounted on his garage, the one that faced the side of our driveway. Still running, he said. Backed up everything just last week. I asked if I could see the footage from the night they threw me out. He didn't even blink. You need it for something? I need it for me. 2 weeks later, I picked up a small USB drive from his mailbox. No questions asked. Back at the motel, I plugged it into my laptop. There it was. Me standing outside in the rain, bag in hand. My father tossing the suitcase onto the steps like it was nothing. My mother standing behind him, arms crossed. And Brexley, leaning against the doorframe, smiling like she'd just won a game no one else had been allowed to play. There was no audio, just grainy video in black and white. But it was enough. I watched it twice, then uploaded the file to a cloud folder. I created a shareable link and sent it, one by one, to each family member. No caption, no angry message, no accusation. I just let the truth speak without me. That night, I left the group chat, the one they used for birthdays and holidays and updates I was rarely part of, but never brave enough to leave. It felt like stepping off a train that had long since passed my stop. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from Brexley. No voicemails. Just one text that came a few minutes after the last attempt. What do you want from me? I stared at it for a while, then replied, I just wanted you to know what the truth looked like. And once you see something that, clearly, you can't pretend it's blurry anymore. The morning after I sent the footage, the motel felt quieter than usual. The walls didn't creak, the hallway didn't echo. Even the coffee machine in the lobby seemed to hiss more gently. Maybe it was me, my body finally unclenching after months of bracing for a blow that had already landed. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through nothing on my phone. That's when the knock came. 3 short taps. Controlled. Not aggressive, not friendly. I opened the door. Marvina. She looked exactly the same. Perfectly styled hair, cream coat, lipstick the color of command. In her right hand, a small purse. In her left, a folded scarf. I came alone, she said, as if that earned her points. I didn't move aside, didn't invite her in. I just leaned against the frame. She stood straight. You humiliated your sister, and me. I waited. No response felt truer than silence. She shifted her weight, eyes flicking to the hallway, as if someone might witness her discomfort. I didn't raise you to be like this, Ellery. Did you raise me? I asked, my voice flat. Or did you tolerate me? She blinked. That's unfair. I exhaled slowly. Just answer one thing. She crossed her arms. Did you ever want me? The question floated in the air between us, sharp as glass, but quiet. Her eyes narrowed, not angry, just calculating. Then she shrugged slightly, like she was returning something to the shelf. You were a surprise, she said. We did what we could. She didn't say it cruelly. That made it worse. There was no fight in her words, just confirmation. I see, I said. She stepped back without prompting. I thought you deserved to know. I nodded once. Now I do. I closed the door. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't throw things. I wrote. I pulled out my notebook, turned to a clean page, and started a letter. Not to Marvina, not to Brexley, not even to myself. To a daughter I may never have. I wrote, I won't build you from pain. I won't teach you silence. And then, if I ever doubt you, I promise to say it to your face. Not behind your back. Not in a kitchen where you're meant to be invisible. I folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it inside the back of my journal. Along with it, I included a copy of the lottery claim receipt. Not for bragging rights, for proof. Proof that sometimes you win without needing to crush anyone. Sometimes the universe gives you a receipt when no one else would give you the time of day. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not the family's, my own. I told him I wanted to set up a scholarship fund for girls like me, specifically for young women who aged out of the foster system or had been cut off by their families. Girls who didn't have someone saying, "You belong here." He asked what I wanted to call it. I said, "The Maybe Fund." He paused, then said, "That's unusual." I think it's perfect. Later that week, I changed my phone number. I blocked every contact with my last name. Even the cousins who meant well but never showed up. I moved to a smaller town, one where no one knew my history, where I could go to the grocery store without bracing for impact. I got a dog from the shelter, medium size, 3 legs, named her Maybe. She didn't bark, just followed me from room to room like I was worth watching. For once, I didn't feel like explaining myself. There was no press release, no announcement. I didn't need people to know how I left. I only needed to know I did. Months later, on a quiet Tuesday, I got an email. The sender's name stopped me cold. Brexley. The subject line read, "Really?" The body was just one sentence. "I don't get how you turned everyone against me." I read it twice, then clicked reply. I typed, "I didn't. I just stopped turning myself against me." And I hit send. The air had shifted. I couldn't say exactly when. It wasn't the kind of change you could pinpoint on a calendar or measure by temperature, but the silence felt different now. Less like absence, more like space. A week after Brexley's email, a small envelope arrived, forwarded from my old P.O. box. The handwriting on the front was unfamiliar, a little shaky. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a clipped newspaper article. The letter was from Mr. Greaves, my old neighbor, the one with the security camera. "Ellery," it read. "I don't know who shared the footage. Maybe someone from that server it was stored on. But it's out now. The world saw it. Just wanted you to know. I believed you. Always did." Attached to the letter was a page torn from the local paper. The headline stretched across the top like a slap. "Family shamed after security footage reveals daughter's public expulsion." There was no photo, no names. Just the story. How a woman was thrown out of her family home in the middle of a storm, caught on camera, and what followed when people began to ask questions. I sat with it for a long time, the paper spread across my lap. Maybe someone online leaked the video. Maybe it just took one person sharing it with a friend who'd had enough family secrets of their own. However it happened, the truth had done what I never could. It stood up for itself. That week, things began to ripple. Marvina and Norvin were quietly removed from their church's hospitality committee. No announcement, no confrontation. They simply weren't asked to lead next season's events. Their usual front-row seats in Sunday service became third-row shadows. You'd miss it if you weren't looking. Brexley's influencer partnerships, candle brands, meal kits, home goods, started disappearing. One by one. She posted a vague statement about negativity from jealous people and how some things don't deserve a response. But comments were turned off within the hour. I didn't post anything, didn't comment, Didn't even like the articles that began to surface online with titles like The Girl with the Suitcase and When Family Fails Quietly. Instead, I baked muffins for my neighbor, Rose, who always brought back my trash cans without asking. I planted tulips in the front yard and read library books I hadn't touched since college. I volunteered at the community pantry twice a week and helped a young woman named Trina rewrite her resume. Every time someone asked where I came from, I just smiled and said, "East of here." Justice didn't knock on their doors, but consequence had a way of settling in, of pulling up a chair and staying quiet just long enough to be noticed. Spring came late that year. The trees bloomed all at once, like they'd been holding their breath for too long. I was weeding the garden when I heard the sound of tires on gravel. A green sedan parked across the street from my house. I recognized it instantly. She didn't get out. Brexley sat in the car for 10 minutes. I didn't move from my garden bed. Just kept trimming, letting her make the decision. Eventually, she rolled down the passenger side window and placed something on the dashboard. A white envelope. Then she drove away. I waited another hour before crossing the street. The car was gone, but the envelope had been tucked into my mailbox. Inside was a handwritten note, folded once. I didn't know how much you carried until you stopped. And by then, we were already standing on your shoulders. No signature, but it didn't need one. I read it once. Then placed it in the top drawer of my desk, the one I'd labeled closure, with a piece of masking tape months ago. I didn't write back. That night, I sat on the porch with Maybe curled up beside me. The air smelled like wet grass and something floral I couldn't quite name. The world was quiet again, but not empty. I sipped tea slowly, watching the trees shift in the breeze. "I'm not healed," I said aloud. Maybe raised her head slightly, ears perked. "But I'm not hers to hurt anymore. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. What I needed was already here. Distance, peace, a dog named Maybe who thought I hung the moon. There is no next chapter, but I'll write one for myself anyway.